Now get out, the old leech is finished. Those were the words that cut through me like a knife. My daughter-in-law, Madison, grabbed my wrist so tight that I felt her nails dig into my skin. My husband, Walter, had just been laid in the ground the day before, and before I could even dry my tears, she looked me dead in the eye with a smirk I will never forget. Beside her, my son, my only child, just stood there. He didn't argue. He didn't defend me. He didn't even look ashamed. He only nodded, silent, like her words were his words too. I felt the ground beneath me tilt, my chest heavy as though Walter's coffin had been lowered right into my heart. For a moment, I thought maybe I hadn't heard correctly. Maybe grief had clouded my ears. But no, Madison's face was clear, sharp, cruel. My son's silence was louder than any insult she could have spoken. And that was the night I realized. Sometimes, the people you love the most are the ones who push you into the fire. But what Madison didn't know, what she couldn't even imagine, was that the next morning, right there in the bank, in front of strangers, bankers, and even my son, her whole world was going to collapse like a house of cards. Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. Let me know where you're watching from. Who knows, you might be lucky to get a shout out in our next story. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy stories like this, because trust me, you don't want to miss the ending to this one. Now, let's go back to where it all began. I was born in North Carolina, in a little town where everyone knew everyone. Life wasn't fancy there. We grew up on hard work, hand-me-down clothes, and the belief that family came before everything. I carried that belief with me all my life. When I married Walter, I thought I had found a man who shared that same heart. He was quiet, steady, the kind of man who didn't talk much, but whose presence filled a room. He worked at a steel mill, while I stayed home raising our son, Jason. We didn't have much, but we had enough. And what we lacked in money, we made up for in love. At least that's what I thought. Raising Jason was my pride. I gave him everything I never had. I sacrificed new shoes so he could have his first guitar. I stayed up late sewing costumes for school plays. I was at every game, every recital, cheering louder than anyone. I thought love was enough to raise a son into a man with a kind heart. But I was wrong. The first time I met Madison, I felt a chill. She was beautiful, yes, tall, elegant, with a smile that could charm a preacher. But behind that smile, her eyes scanned everything like she was calculating what she could take. Walter saw it too, but he kept quiet for Jason's sake. Parents always want to believe their children choose wisely. In the beginning, Madison played sweet. She brought flowers to the house, offered to help in the kitchen, called me mom. But little cracks showed early on. She rolled her eyes when Jason wasn't looking. She bragged about how cheap our furniture was compared to her friends. She hinted that Jason deserved more than what his family could give. Still, I bit my tongue. I wanted my son to be happy, and if that happiness came with Madison, then so be it. But as years went by, Madison's mask slipped completely. She pushed Jason to move across the state, away from us. She complained whenever we visited, acting as though our presence was an inconvenience. Even then, I forgave, because that's what mothers do. We forgive, hoping one day our children will see the truth for themselves. I didn't know the truth would come crashing down after Walter's death. The night before Madison grabbed my wrist and spat those words, the house was filled with quiet. I sat alone in the guest bedroom, clutching the quilt Walter's mother had sewn for us. My body felt heavy with grief, my tears soaking the pillow. Jason hadn't even asked me to stay in their home. Madison had simply said it was easier than sending me back to my little apartment that night. I thought maybe she was being kind in her own way. But the next morning, kindness was the last thing she had to give. I walked into the kitchen, my hands trembling as I poured myself a cup of coffee. Madison sat at the table, scrolling through her phone like the world owed her something. Jason came down the stairs, tie half done, eyes red from lack of sleep. I wanted to tell them thank you for letting me stay the night, for being there while I mourned. I wanted to believe family still meant something. But before I could open my mouth, Madison reached across the table, grabbed my hand tight, and said it. Now get out, the old leech is finished. The mug slipped from my hand, crashing onto the floor. Hot coffee splattered across my legs, but I hardly felt it. My eyes darted to Jason, begging him to say something, anything. But he didn't. He just nodded. I can't explain the kind of pain that moment gave me. It wasn't just grief. It wasn't just betrayal. It was like losing Walter all over again. But this time, my son was the one shoveling the dirt onto my coffin. Still, I held my head high. I picked up the shards of that broken mug, set them gently in the trash, and walked out without another word. Madison thought she had won. Jason thought he had chosen his side. But sometimes life has a way of flipping the board when you least expect it. And that board was about to flip the very next morning. At sunrise, I put on my black dress again and walked to the bank downtown. My knees ached, my body weary, but I walked with purpose. In my purse was a small, folded piece of paper Walter had given me months before his death. For when the time comes, he had whispered, pressing it into my palm. I didn't know then what it meant. But standing in line at the bank, Madison's heels clicking behind me, Jason beside her with his hand in his pockets, I knew. I knew this was the day Madison's world would collapse in front of everyone. And when the teller looked up at me, then at them, then back at the paper in my hand, her face went pale. She cleared her throat, eyes widening. "Ma'am," she said, her voice trembling, I think you should see this." The whole room went quiet. Madison leaned in, annoyed, tapping her nails on the counter. Jason furrowed his brows, confused. And then, the teller's fingers trembled as she looked at the folded paper I had placed on the counter. She glanced at me, then at Jason, then finally at Madison, who was growing more impatient by the second. "Excuse me," the teller said softly. "I'll need to call the branch manager for this." Her words were like a spark in dry grass. Madison immediately scoffed, crossing her arms. "Is this really necessary? We don't have all day. Just transfer the money to our account like we asked. My husband is the only heir. What could possibly be so complicated?" The teller's eyes darted nervously to the office door. The branch manager, a tall man with graying hair, stepped out. He adjusted his glasses, walked slowly to the counter, and picked up the paper. The silence in that bank lobby was so thick you could hear the clock ticking on the wall. People waiting in line leaned forward. A mother hushed her child. Even the security guard shifted, sensing something unusual. The manager unfolded the paper, scanned it, and then froze. He looked at me, then at Jason, then finally at Madison, whose smug grin was plastered on her face as if the world was already hers. His lips parted, but before he could speak, Jason leaned forward. "Look, sir, my father passed away yesterday. I'm his only son, and I'm here with my wife to sort his estate. This shouldn't be a problem." The manager didn't answer right away. He tapped the paper against the counter, his brows knitting tighter. Madison smirked, tugging Jason's sleeve. "Tell him again, honey. Make him understand. This old woman has no claim here." Old woman. That's what I was to her, nothing but dead weight. The manager set the paper down carefully, as though it carried fire. "Mr. Cole," he said slowly, "before we proceed, I need you and your wife to step into my office. There are some details that cannot be discussed out here." Madison's smile flickered, just for a second. She wasn't used to people telling her no. But then she straightened, tossed her hair over her shoulder, and marched ahead as though the office already belonged to her. Jason followed, silent as ever. And me. I walked behind them, my heart pounding in my chest, holding on to Walter's last gift like it was oxygen itself. The office was small, lined with certificates and a shelf of leather-bound books. The manager closed the door behind us and motioned for us to sit. Madison flopped into a chair, crossing her legs, while Jason perched stiffly beside her. I sat opposite them, my hands folded neatly in my lap. The manager sat behind his desk and cleared his throat. He placed the paper in front of him. "This document," he began, "was signed and notarized 3 months ago. It overrides any assumptions about inheritance." Madison leaned forward, her lips curling. "Assumptions? There are no assumptions. My husband is the heir. What more is there to say?" The manager ignored her tone and looked directly at Jason. "Did your father ever discuss a trust with you?" Jason frowned. A trust? No, he never mentioned it. The manager adjusted his glasses again. Well, he created one. And according to this document, all assets tied to Mr. Walter Cole's accounts and estate have already been secured into that trust. The room went still. Madison blinked. Into the trust? Which trust? The manager leaned back, folding his hands. Not yours. Madison's face drained of color. She glanced at Jason, who looked as though someone had pulled the ground out from under him. I sat quietly, my heart aching but strong. Walter had protected me even in death. But that was only the beginning, because what Madison didn't know was that this trust didn't just secure Walter's money. It revealed something far bigger, something that would not only destroy her arrogance, but shatter the image she had built for everyone who believed her life was perfect. She opened her mouth to speak, but before a word could leave her lips, the office door flew open. The teller stood there, pale as a ghost, holding another folder. Sir, she whispered, her voice trembling. You'll want to see this too. It's urgent. The manager's eyes widened. He took the folder, flipped it open, and as his eyes scanned the first page, the color drained from his face. Jason leaned forward. What is it? What's going on? The manager's hand trembled as he set the folder down. He looked at Madison, then at Jason, then at me. And with a heavy breath, he said words that made Madison leap to her feet and slam her fists on the desk. The manager's voice was low, but every syllable cut through the air like glass. Mr. Cole, he said, looking directly at Jason, it seems your father had multiple accounts that you and your wife may not have been aware of, and the trust that controls them, he paused, glancing at me, was set up with her as the sole trustee. His hand motioned toward me. Me. Madison's chair screeched as she shot to her feet. What? Her voice echoed in the office. That's impossible. She's lying. She must have tricked him somehow. He would never leave everything to her. Jason's eyes darted between me and the manager, his face pale. Mom, is this true? I swallowed hard. My heart ached, not with guilt but with the weight of truth. Your father loved you, Jason, but he also knew who really stood by him. He made sure I would be protected. Madison slammed her hands on the desk. Protected? Protected. What about us? What about Jason? He's his son. Blood is supposed to come first. The manager raised a hand, firm but calm. Mrs. Cole, please. The paperwork is legal and binding. These were your father's wishes. There's no disputing that. For a moment, no one spoke. The sound of Madison's breathing filled the room. Short, furious, like a kettle ready to blow. Jason's head dropped into his hands. And me. I sat still, my fingers tracing the seam of my skirt. A part of me wanted to scream, to shout at Jason for standing silent the night before, for letting his wife call me an old leech. But another part of me ached, because I knew this wasn't just about money. This was about the son I raised turning into someone I hardly recognized. As the tension simmered in that tiny office, my mind drifted back years earlier to the first time I caught a glimpse of Madison's greed. It was Thanksgiving in North Carolina, the year Jason had proposed. Walter was carving the turkey, his hands shaking slightly from arthritis, when Madison leaned close to me in the kitchen. Jason told me about your house, she said, her voice syrupy sweet. It must be worth quite a bit now with the market climbing. Have you two thought about what will happen with it when you move on? I blinked at her, stunned. Move on. She laughed, covering her mouth with her manicured hand. Oh, don't take it the wrong way. I just mean, it would be smart to have things in order. Jason and I could help manage it. Her eyes weren't on me. They were on the china cabinet in the corner, the one Walter's grandmother had left us. I'll never forget how she stared at it, like a hunter sizing up prey. That was the moment I knew Madison didn't see family. She saw assets. And now, standing in this bank office years later, her claws were fully out. Jason finally lifted his head. His voice was weak, uncertain. Mom, if this is true, why didn't Dad tell me? My throat tightened. Because he knew you were already under her influence, Jason. He didn't want her hands on what he spent a lifetime building. He trusted me to protect it, not just for myself, but for the family name. Madison let out a bitter laugh, her voice sharp. Protect the family name? Don't make me laugh. You're nothing but a parasite. You lived off Walter your whole life, and now you're trying to cut his son out of what's rightfully his." Her words stung, but I held my ground. I lived beside him. I built that life with him. I was there through every hardship, every triumph. And I'll be here long after your lies collapse. The manager cleared his throat, pushing the folder closer. "There's something else you both need to see." He opened it and turned it around, revealing a set of documents, bank statements, withdrawals, transfers. His finger tapped on a line highlighted in yellow. "Mr. Cole," he said to Jason, "it appears in the last 2 years, large sums of money were withdrawn from your father's accounts. And the signatures here," he slid the page toward Jason, "don't belong to him." Jason leaned closer. His face went white. The signature was familiar, but not his father's. It was Madison's. Jason's lips parted, his voice barely a whisper. "Madison, what is this?" Madison's chair scraped again as she stood, her hands trembling now. "Don't you dare look at me like that, Jason. I did it for us, for our future. Your father didn't need it. He was old, he was dying, and she pointed at me with a shaking finger. She would have wasted it." Jason's eyes widened in horror. You stole from my father?" The air grew heavy. My son, who had stood silent when I was humiliated, now stared at his wife like he was seeing her for the first time. And then, the office door burst open again. This time, it wasn't the teller. It was a uniformed officer, his hand resting firmly on his belt. His eyes scanned the room, landing on Madison. "Mrs. Cole," he said sternly, "we need to have a word about some irregular transactions tied to your name." Madison froze, her face draining of every drop of color. The air in the office turned cold the moment the officer spoke. "Mrs. Cole," he said again, firmer this time, "you'll need to come with me." Madison's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "Come with you? For what? This is ridiculous." She looked at Jason, eyes wide, desperate. "Honey, tell him. Tell him this is a mistake." Jason didn't move. He stared at her, stunned, his jaw tight. The officer stepped forward, his boots heavy against the polished floor. "We've been investigating a series of unauthorized withdrawals from Mr. Walter Cole's accounts. Signatures were forged. The trail leads back to you, Mrs. Cole." Madison shook her head violently. No, you don't understand. I'm his daughter-in-law. Why would I ever steal from family?" Her voice cracked, but the words rang hollow. Everyone in that room already knew. The officer's hand hovered above the cuffs at his belt. "Ma'am, please cooperate. We can do this quietly." For a moment, I thought Madison would crumble right there. But her pride was stronger than her sense. She whirled toward Jason, her voice shrill. "Jason, say something. Are you just going to let them drag me away like a criminal?" Jason's hands clenched on his knees. His eyes were red, his chest heaving. He opened his mouth as though to defend her, but no words came. Because deep down he knew. And Madison saw it too. Her face twisted, her carefully painted mask cracking. "You coward," she spat. "You're just like her. Weak. Spineless. No wonder your father didn't trust you with anything." The room went silent. Jason flinched as though she'd slapped him. And for the first time in years, I saw the boy I once raised, the one who used to run into my arms after falling off his bike, the one who once cried when he accidentally broke my favorite vase, peek through the hard shell he had built. His shoulders sagged, his lips trembled. I wanted to reach for him, but I didn't. Not yet. The officer gestured toward the door. "Mrs. Cole, let's go." Madison staggered, but her fury hadn't cooled. She turned back to me, her eyes blazing. "Don't think you've won, old woman. You think you're safe? You're nothing without Walter. Nothing. And I'll prove it, just watch me." Her words sent a chill down my spine. Even as the officer guided her out, even as she shrieked protests that echoed down the bank's marble hall, I knew this wasn't the end. Madison wasn't the kind of woman to surrender quietly. After she was gone, the room felt strangely empty. Jason slumped back in his chair, covering his face with his hands. The manager and officer exchanged a quiet word outside the door, leaving us alone. For the first time since Walter's funeral, I saw my son not as Madison's husband, not as a stranger, but as the little boy I raised. Mom, his voice cracked. Did I make a mistake? My chest tightened. We all make mistakes, Jason. What matters is whether we learn from them. He shook his head, his eyes filling with tears. I let her talk me into everything. I let her treat you the way she did. I thought she loved me, but his voice broke. But she just loved what I had. I reached across the desk and placed my hand over his. For the first time in so long, he didn't pull away. Your father knew, I whispered. That's why he left things the way he did. He wanted you to see for yourself. Not because he didn't love you, Jason, but because he did. Jason's shoulders shook as silent tears fell. And though my own heart still ached, a flicker of hope lit inside me. Maybe, just maybe, this was the start of him finding his way back. But peace is never long-lived when greed has already poisoned the well. Because just as Jason wiped his eyes, the manager re-entered the office. His face was grave, his voice low. There's something else, he said, and I think you both need to prepare yourselves. He slid another document across the desk. My breath caught when I saw the letterhead, bold, official, unmistakable. Jason frowned, picking it up. His eyes scanned the first line, and his face went pale. What is this? He whispered. The manager clasped his hands, his eyes darting to me. It appears Mrs. Cole had already filed paperwork regarding Mr. Walter Cole's estate. Paperwork that, if it had gone through, would have left you, ma'am, he nodded at me. With nothing. Jason's hands trembled as he gripped the document. She tried to cut my mother out completely? The manager nodded grimly. And not just you, Mr. Cole. She planned to put everything into her own name. I felt my stomach twist. My son's tears turned to anger, his jaw tightening. He stood abruptly, slamming the paper back on the desk. And with a voice I hadn't heard since he was a child, raw, fiery, protective, he growled, "She's not getting away with this." Jason's fist hit the desk, so hard that the pens rattled in their holder. His eyes were bloodshot, his chest rising and falling in quick bursts. She tried to erase you, Mom. She tried to erase everything Dad built. His voice cracked, but carried a fire I hadn't heard in years. I won't let her get away with it. Not this time. The manager, startled by his outburst, raised a hand. Mr. Cole, I understand your anger, but this situation is delicate. The investigation is ongoing. Any rash decisions could. I don't care. Jason cut him off, his voice sharp. If she thinks she can destroy my family, she has no idea what's coming. He turned toward me, gripping my shoulders so tightly I could feel the weight of his desperation. Mom, I'm going to fix this. I swear on Dad's grave, I'll fix it. I stared at him, my heart torn between relief and fear. Relief that my son finally seemed to see the truth. Fear that his anger would drive him into a trap Madison had already set. Because if there was one thing I had learned over the years, it was this. Madison always played the long game. The officer soon returned, confirming that Madison had been escorted out of the building. She's not under arrest yet, he explained, but she'll be questioned. If what's in these documents holds up, she could be facing charges for fraud. Jason muttered under his breath, good. Let her rot. But I wasn't so sure. Madison was clever. Reckless, yes, but clever. And people like her always had a way of wriggling out of tight corners, especially when fueled by desperation. We left the bank in silence, the autumn air of North Carolina crisp against our faces. The streets bustled with people going about their lives, unaware that mine had been turned upside down in the span of 2 days. First Walter's death, then Madison's cruelty. Now the storm of lies unraveling piece by piece. Jason walked beside me, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. For once, he didn't walk ahead like he was too busy or too important to wait for me. He stayed at my side, as if some small part of him feared I might disappear if he looked away. At the corner, we passed the little diner Walter and I used to visit every Friday night. The red booths were faded now, but I could almost hear his laughter echoing through the glass. I stopped for a moment, my heart aching. Jason noticed. Do you want to go in? I shook my head. Not today. Because even though grief weighed heavy, something else was pressing on my mind, Madison. Later that evening, as I sat alone in my apartment, I thought back to Walter's words when he handed me that folded paper months before. For when the time comes, he had whispered. He must have known. He must have seen through Madison long before Jason did. And though I was grateful for his foresight, I couldn't shake the unease gnawing at me. Because Madison wasn't finished. I could feel it. My fear proved right. At nearly midnight, my phone buzzed. Jason's name lit up the screen. My chest tightened as I answered. Jason? Are you alright? His voice was shaky, frantic. Mom, she's here. What do you mean she's there? I came back home after dropping you off. She was supposed to still be with the police. But when I walked in, she was sitting in the living room like nothing happened. She said if I don't help her, she'll destroy us both. My grip on the phone tightened. Jason, listen to me carefully. Do not believe anything she tells you. Don't let her twist your mind again. He whispered, she has papers, Mom. New papers. She said Dad's trust won't hold if she can prove you coerced him. She said she has evidence. My blood ran cold. Evidence? What evidence? Jason's voice broke. I don't know, but she swore she'd take it to court. And she said if I don't stand by her side, she'll drag me down with her. My stomach turned. Madison had always been ruthless, but this was a new level. And before I could respond, I heard a sudden noise through the phone. A sharp crash, Jason's startled shout, and then Madison's voice, venomous and clear as day. You're either with me, Jason, or you're nothing. Choose now. The line went dead. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window, clutching the phone in my hands, staring out at the dark streets of Raleigh. Every creak of the floor above me, every passing car, made my heart leap. Jason's last words replayed in my head like a broken record. Choose now. I wanted to run to him, to protect him like I had when he was a child. But I knew Madison. If I walked into that house at midnight, she'd twist the scene into her favor. She'd scream that I was the intruder. She'd claim I was trying to manipulate Jason against her. And in his fragile state, part of him might believe her. So I waited. I prayed. And I prepared. By morning, the phone rang again. It was Jason. His voice was tired, heavy. Mom, she's not leaving. She stayed up all night going through Dad's old files. She keeps saying she has proof you tricked him into changing the will. I don't know what to do. Jason, I said firmly, listen to me. Your father was in his right mind when he made those changes. He wanted to protect me. Don't let her convince you otherwise. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he whispered, she said if I don't back her up, she'll tell everyone I helped her steal from Dad's accounts. My breath caught. So that was her game. She was going to drag him down with her, even if it meant burning the entire house to ash. That afternoon, Madison made her first move. I walked into the grocery store and felt eyes on me. Whispers followed as I pushed my cart down the aisle. A woman I'd known for 20 years, who had once brought me soup when I was sick, turned her back when I smiled at her. At the checkout, the cashier, a young man with kind eyes, hesitated before handing me my change. Ma'am, he murmured, I don't know if it's true, but people are saying some ugly things. I pressed him gently. What things? He looked around nervously. That you forced your husband to sign over everything. That you cheated your own son. That you're trying to have your daughter-in-law arrested out of jealousy. My knees weakened. Madison had struck. By the time I left the store, I could already see her fingerprints everywhere. A few posts on social media. A handful of carefully placed rumors. She knew exactly how to play the part of the victim. The grieving young widow-in-law whose cruel mother-in-law was trying to steal everything. And the worst part? People were believing it. That evening, Jason came to my apartment. His face was pale, his shirt wrinkled. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. She's spreading lies, Mom, he said, collapsing into a chair. She told half the neighborhood that you brainwashed Dad, that you've been planning this for years. She even told people you're trying to take our house. I swallowed hard. And you? What did you say? His eyes filled with shame. I froze. I didn't defend you. I just stood there. My chest ached, but I kept my voice steady. Jason, you have to decide who you are. Not who she wants you to be. Not who you think you need to be to survive. Who you are. For the first time, his gaze met mine with something like resolve. I want to be the son Dad raised me to be. The man you raised me to be. But Mom, his voice dropped. She said she has a recording. I frowned. A recording? Jason nodded. She claimed she recorded Dad saying he didn't want you to have anything. She swore she'd play it in court if I don't back her up. My blood ran cold. That's impossible. Your father would never say that. Jason's hands shook. I know. But what if she faked it? What if people believe her anyway? Before I could answer, there was a sharp knock at the door. 3 hard, deliberate bangs. Jason and I froze. Slowly, I rose and opened it. And there stood Madison. Her lips curved into a cold smile, her eyes glittering with triumph. She held up a small digital recorder between 2 fingers. Care to hear what Walter really said? She sneered. The recorder dangled from Madison's fingers like a snake ready to strike. Her smile was smug, poisonous, the kind of smile that told me she believed she had already won. Jason stiffened beside me. Madison, what are you doing here? She pushed past me into the apartment as if she owned the place. Her heels clicked on the wooden floor, each step deliberate. She turned, holding the recorder up like a trophy. I'm here, she said coolly, to give you both one last chance to do the right thing. Hand over the trust. Sign the estate into my name. And this, she shook the recorder, will never see the light of day. I narrowed my eyes. What's on it? Her smirk widened. Why don't I play it for you? She pressed the button. A crackle of static filled the room. Then a voice. Walter's voice. Madeline doesn't deserve any of it. Not after what she's done. If it were up to me, I'd leave everything to Jason. Madison will know what to do with it. My heart stopped. My breath caught in my throat. It sounded like Walter. The cadence, the drawl in his North Carolina accent, the way he clipped his consonants, it was all him. But the words were daggers. Jason's face went pale. Dad said that? Tears burned my eyes. No, Jason, he didn't. He would never say that. Madison tilted her head, feigning pity. Oh, but he did. And this recording is admissible. Imagine how a judge will see it. The grieving son, betrayed by his own mother who manipulated his father's last wishes. It's a perfect story. And the best part? Everyone already believes it. Jason shook his head, his voice trembling. This can't be real. He wouldn't say that. I stepped closer, my voice sharp. It's fake. Spliced together. Walter never trusted you, Madison, and you know it. Her eyes gleamed with cruel satisfaction. Say whatever you like, old woman. But courts believe what they hear. And unless you want this played for the whole world, you'll do exactly what I say. Jason buried his face in his hands. His loyalty, fragile as glass, wavered under the weight of her lie. I could see the battle raging in him. His heart knew I was telling the truth, but his ears had just heard his father's voice cut me to pieces. Jason, I said softly, look at me. He lifted his head, his eyes wet. Do you really believe your father would ever call me unworthy? Do you? He swallowed hard. No, but Madison's voice cut in like a knife. But you heard him, Jason, with your own ears. Are you going to call your father a liar? The room fell silent. Jason stood frozen between us, like a boy trapped in the middle of a war. My heart pounded. If Madison pulled him back into her grasp now, everything Walter had done to protect me would unravel. Jason turned slowly toward her, his lips parting. But before he could speak, the apartment door burst open with a loud crash. 2 men in suits stormed in, badges flashing. Behind them, the officer from the bank. Mrs. Madison Cole. One of the men barked, "We have a warrant. Hand over that device immediately." Madison's face twisted in shock. What? You can't. This is my property. The officer's voice was firm. Not anymore. That recording is part of an active fraud investigation. The taller man stepped forward, snatching the recorder from her hand. He pressed play, listening for a few seconds before turning to Jason and me. His jaw tightened. This, he said, holding up the device, is doctored. And we can prove it. Madison's eyes widened in horror. And then, with a shriek that made the walls tremble, she lunged for the recorder. Madison lunged like a cornered animal, her nails flashing as she clawed at the tall agent's arm. "Give it back," she shrieked, her voice breaking. "You don't understand. He was mine. The money was supposed to be mine." The room erupted into chaos. Jason grabbed her wrist, trying to pull her back. "Madison, stop." She spun on him, eyes wild, spittle flying from her lips. You think she loves you? She doesn't care about you, Jason. She's poisoned your mind against me since day one. Her words sliced through the air, but Jason didn't flinch this time. He just stared at her, his hand still gripping her wrist. Something in him had shifted. The hesitation that once weighed him down was gone. The shorter agent moved swiftly, pinning Madison's arms behind her. She kicked and screamed, thrashing like a wildcat. No, you can't do this to me. That's mine. All of it is mine. The officer from the bank spoke up, calm but stern. Mrs. Cole, the evidence on this device shows clear signs of audio manipulation. The lab will confirm it. For now, you're coming with us. Madison twisted in the agent's hold, her eyes burning into me with venom. You old witch. You think you've won? You think this changes anything? Jason will never choose you. He's mine. Do you hear me? Mine. Her words echoed through the apartment as they dragged her toward the door. For a moment, the only sound was her furious screams, then silence as the door slammed shut behind them. Jason stood rooted to the spot, his chest heaving, his face pale. He looked at me, his eyes glassy. Mom, his voice cracked. I didn't want to believe her. But when I heard Dad's voice, it felt so real. For a moment, I thought. I stepped forward and pulled him into my arms before he could finish. He sagged against me, trembling. She's been feeding you poison for so long, son. Anyone would have doubted. But the truth always rises. Jason clung to me, like the boy who used to run into my arms after scraping his knee. For the first time since Walter's death, I felt like my son was really back. But the peace lasted only a few heartbeats, because just as relief began to wash over us, the phone on the table rang. Its shrill tone cut through the air like a warning. Jason pulled away and picked it up. Hello. His face drained of color. What? That's not possible. I stepped closer, my stomach tightening. What is it? He hung up slowly, his hand trembling. That was Dad's lawyer. He said someone filed an emergency claim against the estate this morning. Someone claiming Dad left a second will. My blood ran cold. A second will? Jason nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. And it names Madison as the sole heir. Jason dropped onto the couch as if his legs could no longer hold him. His hands covered his face, and I could see his shoulders trembling. A second will? I whispered, my heart pounding. That's impossible. Your father was meticulous. He left nothing to chance. Jason's voice was muffled behind his hands. The lawyer said, it was delivered by courier this morning. Madison's name is on it in black and white. I sank into the chair across from him, my mind racing. Walter had been many things, stern, sometimes distant, but careless he was not. He had spent months preparing his estate, making sure Jason and I would be secure. If there had been another will, I would have known. Jason finally looked up, his eyes bloodshot. What if she's telling the truth this time? What if Dad changed his mind before he died? I reached across and gripped his hand tightly. Listen to me. Your father did not leave everything to Madison. He saw her greed. He warned me about it. This is just another one of her tricks. But even as I said it, a sliver of doubt crept in. Not because I believed Madison, but because I knew how dangerous she was. If she could fake a recording, what else could she forge? 2 days later, we sat in the lawyer's office in downtown Raleigh. The heavy oak table between us seemed to grow taller with every word the attorney spoke. The will arrived in a sealed envelope, he explained, adjusting his glasses. Inside was a document bearing Mr. Cole's signature and notarization. If valid, it supersedes the previous will. Jason leaned forward, his voice sharp. But how do we know it's valid? The lawyer gave a weary sigh. That's the question, isn't it? We'll have to verify the notary, compare handwriting, check dates. If Madison forged this, he trailed off, the implication hanging in the air like smoke. I forced myself to ask the question I dreaded. And if it's real? The lawyer hesitated. Then the estate belongs to Madison. The words hit me like a hammer to the chest. Jason's fist slammed onto the table. No, I don't believe it. Dad would never do that. The lawyer nodded slowly. I agree. But the courts don't work on belief. They work on evidence. And right now, Madison has something that looks very convincing. That night, sleep eluded me again. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, hearing Walter's voice in my head. His steady tone, his quiet assurances, "Don't worry, Madeline. I've secured everything. She'll never touch a dime." If only he were here to see what she was doing. I rose from bed, walked to Walter's old desk, and opened the bottom drawer. There, among his papers, was a worn leather notebook. His handwriting sprawled across the pages, numbers, dates, notes from meetings. I turned the pages one by one until I froze. On the last page, in bold strokes, he had written, "Do not trust Madison. Safeguard the real documents." My hand shook as I held the notebook. Walter had hidden something even Madison hadn't found. I didn't have long to think about it, because just as dawn broke, I heard the sound of tires screeching outside my window. I rushed to the glass, and there she was, Madison, stepping out of a sleek black car, clutching a thick folder against her chest. She was striding toward the courthouse across the street, her head held high, a smug smile plastered across her face. Jason came running into the room, his shirt half-buttoned, panic in his eyes. "Mom, she's filing it today. If that will get logged, the court will treat it as real until proven otherwise." I clutched Walter's notebook to my chest. My heart thundered. "Then we have no choice," I said, my voice shaking but firm. "We have to stop her before she walks into that courthouse." The morning air in Raleigh carried a damp chill, the kind that clings to your bones no matter how tightly you wrap your coat. I barely noticed. My pulse was hammering too loudly, drowning everything else out. From the apartment window, I'd watched Madison strut across the street like she already owned the world. Her heels clicked against the pavement, her chin raised high. That smug smile daring the whole city to challenge her. In her arms, the folder looked heavy, but she carried it as if it were her crown. Inside those papers lay her latest lie, this so-called second will. Jason hovered near the door, jittery like a man about to run into a burning building. His shirt was buttoned wrong, his tie hanging loose, but he didn't care. "Mom," he said, "if she files that will today, we'll be buried in legal battles for months, years even, and people will believe her until then. She'll drag you through the mud." I held up Walter's notebook. My hands trembled as I gripped it, but my voice was steady. "Your father left us a lifeline, Jason. He knew she'd try something. We just have to figure out what he meant." Jason frowned. "The line about safeguarding the real documents?" "Yes," I said, flipping to the page. The bold letters stared back at me. "Do not trust Madison. Safeguard the real documents." Jason rubbed his forehead. "But what does it mean? Did Dad hide something?" "Another copy of the will." "Maybe," I whispered. "Or evidence. Proof that whatever she's carrying is fake." I looked out the window again. Madison was almost at the courthouse steps. People passing by glanced at her, curious about the striking woman with the folder, the one radiating confidence like a queen entering her palace. She craved their eyes on her. That was always Madison's way. I turned to Jason. "We can't just sit here. If she files that thing without challenge, she'll gain ground. We need to be there when she hands it over." Jason hesitated. "You're saying we confront her in the courthouse?" I nodded. "Exactly there. Exactly then. Where witnesses can hear everything. She thrives in the shadows, Jason. But in the light, her lies don't hold as strong." Jason took a deep breath, then grabbed his jacket. "All right, Mom. Let's go." The courthouse was only a few blocks away, but the walk felt endless. Each step echoed with memories I'd rather forget. Walking these same streets after Walter's funeral, Madison's arm hooked through Jason's as she smirked at me, whispering, "Now get out, the old Leech is finished." That humiliation still burned in my chest. As we climbed the courthouse steps, my knees wobbled. The tall columns loomed above us, solemn and imposing. People bustled in and out. Lawyers with briefcases, couples filing marriage licenses, families clutching adoption papers. Life, in all its messy forms, converged here. And in the middle of it stood Madison. She was just inside the lobby, speaking with the clerk at the front desk. The folder lay on the counter between them, her manicured fingers tapping on its cover. She looked radiant in a crimson suit, her blonde hair swept into a perfect bun. If you didn't know better, you'd think she was a grieving daughter-in-law simply fulfilling her late father-in-law's wishes. I squared my shoulders and walked forward, Jason by my side. "Excuse me," I said, my voice louder than I intended. "That folder doesn't belong here." The clerk looked up, startled. Madison turned slowly, her lips curling into that familiar venomous smile. "Well, well," she purred. "If it isn't the old Leech herself." Jason bristled. "That's enough, Madison." She ignored him, tilting her head at me. "You just can't stand that Walter chose me over you, can you?" Even in death, he knew who deserved his fortune. My hand clenched around Walter's notebook. "Walter never chose you. And deep down you know it." Madison's laugh rang out, sharp and cruel, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. Lawyers paused mid-step. A woman waiting in line turned to stare. Even the clerk shifted uncomfortably. Madison thrived on drama, and now she had an audience. She opened the folder with a dramatic flourish, pulling out a neatly typed document. "For anyone interested, this is Walter Cole's true last will and testament. It clearly states that everything is left to me." Gasps rippled through the small crowd forming around us. Jason took a step closer, his jaw tight. "That's a forgery." Madison arched an eyebrow. "Is it? Or are you just too blind to see that your father finally recognized my worth?" I opened Walter's notebook, flipping it so the page with his warning faced outward. "Walter's real words are right here. He knew you tried this. He told us to safeguard the real documents." Madison's eyes flickered, just for a second, but then her smile returned. "A scribble in an old notebook? How pathetic. Do you really think a judge will take that over a signed, notarized will?" Jason stepped forward, his voice steady now. "If that's real, let's compare signatures. Dad had a unique way of writing his name. He looped his W in a way no one could fake." Madison's smile faltered again. She clutched the paper tighter, her knuckles whitening. The clerk cleared his throat nervously. Ma'am, if there's a dispute, I'll need to log both claims. The court will decide authenticity." Madison's composure cracked. She snapped, "No. This is the only valid document. Hers means nothing." And in that moment I saw it. The fear behind her rage, the desperation in her eyes. She knew she was cornered. I raised my voice, clear and strong, so everyone in the lobby could hear. "If you're so certain it's real, Madison, why are you afraid to let the court examine it?" The crowd murmured. Eyes turned to Madison, waiting for her answer. For the first time, her confidence wavered. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Jason reached into the folder and yanked the will from her hands before she could react. He held it up, his voice shaking with anger. "We'll see what the experts say. If you forge this, Madison, it's over for you." Her face contorted with fury. "You little traitor," she spat, lunging at him. "You're supposed to be on my side." Gasps filled the lobby as she grabbed for the paper. Jason pulled back, but she clawed at his arm, knocking into a clerk's desk. The folder spilled open, paper scattering across the marble floor. And then, as if fate had been waiting for this moment, something slipped free from the folder that none of us expected. A photograph. It slid across the floor and landed at my feet. I bent down and picked it up. My breath caught in my throat. It was Walter, sitting at his desk, next to Madison, and in her hand, clearly visible, was a pen hovering over a blank sheet of paper. The caption on the back, written in Walter's unmistakable handwriting, read, "Evidence." "She thinks I don't see her watching me." The room went silent. All eyes shifted from the photo to Madison. Her face went pale, then red, then pale again. And in that split second, I realized Walter had caught her. He had known all along. Madison shrieked, lunging again, this time for me. But before her hands reached me, a bailiff rushed in from the side, seizing her by the arms. She fought, screamed, cursed, but the photo in my hand burned like a torch, the truth lighting up every dark corner of her lies. And as they dragged her away, the crowd erupted into whispers. Some stared in disbelief, others in disgust. The image of Madison, the grieving, innocent widow, was crumbling right before their eyes. But even as she disappeared behind the courthouse doors, I knew this wasn't over. Because Madison wasn't the kind of woman who went down quietly. The courthouse lobby still buzzed with whispers long after Madison had been dragged away. People clutched their files, murmuring to one another, glancing at me and Jason as though we had been part of a live drama staged for their entertainment. The photo in my hand trembled, not from its weight, but from the gravity of what it meant. Walter hadn't just suspected Madison. He had documented her. He had left us breadcrumbs, trusting we would follow them when the time came. Jason touched my shoulder, his eyes wide. Mom, Dad knew. He knew she was trying to trick him. I nodded, staring at the image of Madison, frozen in time beside Walter, pen in hand. His neat handwriting on the back was like a whisper from the grave. Evidence. She thinks I don't see her watching me. For a moment, relief washed over me. For the first time in weeks, the tide seemed to shift in our favor. The clerk leaned closer, eyes wide. Ma'am, if that handwriting is his, that photograph could discredit her entire claim. This changes everything. But Jason wasn't smiling. His jaw tightened, his gaze locked on the courthouse doors where Madison had been dragged away. Mom, he said quietly, she won't stop. You saw her face. That wasn't defeat. That was a promise. And he was right. 2 days later, Madison was out on bail. Jason and I watched the news that evening, the TV light flickering across the living room walls. A local reporter stood outside the courthouse, microphone in hand. Earlier today, Madison Cole, daughter-in-law of the late Walter Cole, was released pending further investigation into allegations of fraud. Cole denies all accusations, stating she is the victim of a smear campaign orchestrated by her husband's mother, Madeline Cole. The screen cut to Madison herself, standing at a podium, dressed in a soft blue dress that made her look almost angelic. Her hair was loose, falling in waves over her shoulders. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, her voice trembling. All I've ever wanted, she said, her lips quivering, was to honor Walter's memory. He loved me like his own daughter, and it breaks my heart that his widow would accuse me of such vile things. I am grieving, and instead of compassion, I've been met with hatred. This isn't just about money. It's about respect for a man who can't defend himself. Jason gripped the remote, so hard I thought it would crack. She's turning it around, Mom. She's making you the villain. And she was good at it. Too good. Watching her crocodile tears, I knew half the city would believe her. She wasn't fighting us in court anymore. She was fighting us in the court of public opinion, and that battlefield was even more dangerous. The next morning, the phone calls started. Old friends from church, neighbors, even distant cousins. Some offered comfort. Others didn't bother hiding their skepticism. Madeline, one voice sneered, I can't believe you'd stoop so low. The poor girl just lost her father-in-law, and you're dragging her name through the mud. I hung up, my hands trembling. Jason stormed in from the kitchen, his phone buzzing nonstop. He slammed it onto the counter. They're harassing me now, Mom. Her lies are spreading faster than we can keep up. I sat down heavily, the weight of it pressing on my chest. She's winning the sympathy vote. That's always been her gift, making poison look like honey. Jason paced the room. Then we have to change the narrative. Dad left more than just that photograph. He must have hidden something bigger. Something that proves beyond doubt what she tried to do. I opened Walter's notebook again, tracing the ink of his final words. Safeguard the real documents. Real documents. The phrase echoed in my head. It wasn't just about wills. Walter had files on everything, business deals, property records, insurance. If Madison had tried to tamper with one, maybe he had tucked away originals somewhere safe. Jason froze mid-step. Mom, the cabin. I looked up. What cabin? The one in Asheville, he said, his voice quickening. Dad's retreat in the mountains. Remember? He used to disappear there with his ledgers whenever he wanted peace. Madison never liked going, said it was too rustic. My heart skipped. Walter's mountain cabin had been his sanctuary, the one place Madison's claws never reached. If he hid anything, it would be there. Jason grabbed his coat. We need to go. Now. The drive to Asheville was long, winding through forests and hills that seemed to swallow the road whole. Rain tapped against the windshield, a steady rhythm that matched the storm in my chest. I stared out the window, remembering the last time Walter had taken me there. He'd sat by the fire, sipping coffee, his face calm in a way it rarely was back home. Out here, he had said, the noise disappears. You can think clearly. You can plan. The memory sent chills through me. Had he planned for this? Had he known Madison would unleash hell after he was gone? Jason kept his hands tight on the wheel. Mom, if there's something up there, it could destroy her case completely. But we have to be ready. If she suspects we're going, she'll try to stop us. I nodded, my hand resting protectively over Walter's notebook. Then we moved quietly. We don't let her get wind of it. But as we turned off the main road and climbed higher into the misty mountains, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were already being followed. The cabin appeared just as I remembered it, tucked among towering pines, smoke stains still marking the stone chimney. It looked untouched, frozen in time, like Walter had only just left it. Jason unlocked the door with the old brass key he'd kept on his keychain. The hinges creaked as it swung open, revealing the familiar scent of cedar and dust. Inside, everything was as Walter had left it. The leather armchair by the fireplace, the shelves lined with worn books, and in the corner, his heavy oak desk. Jason moved quickly, pulling open drawers, rifling through papers. I joined him, my hands shaking as I sifted through ledgers, receipts, old letters. Nothing stood out, until I found a false panel at the back of the bottom drawer. My breath caught. Jason, look. He helped me slide it free. Behind it was a metal box, heavy and locked with a small keyhole. We stared at it, our hearts pounding. This had to be it, the safeguard Walter had mentioned. Jason looked around, then spotted an old key hanging on a nail by the fireplace. He snatched it, rushed back, and slid it into the lock. It turned with a satisfying click. The lid creaked open. Inside were several thick envelopes, each stamped with dates and Walter's bold handwriting. The first was labeled, Estate, True Will, Final. Jason's hands shook as he pulled it out. He opened it carefully, revealing the real will, notarized and sealed. It left everything exactly as Walter had intended, to me and Jason. Not a word about Madison. Tears blurred my vision. He protected us. He really did. But there was more. Another envelope, thicker, labeled Madison Evidence. Jason opened it. Inside were photographs, bank statements, even copies of emails. Every piece detailed Madison's attempts to manipulate Walter, from pushing him to transfer funds to secret meetings with a notary who later lost paperwork. Walter had gathered it all. This is it, Jason whispered. This is the nail in her coffin. I clutched the envelope to my chest, hope surging in me for the first time in months. But just as I turned toward the door, the sound of gravel crunching outside froze me in place. Jason looked at me, his face pale. Mom, did you hear that? We crept to the window. Through the mist, headlights cut across the clearing. A black SUV rolled to a stop right in front of the cabin. And out stepped Madison, her eyes locked on the cabin, her lips curling into a smile that promised war. The air in the cabin turned electric the moment Madison's heels clicked against the gravel. Jason's hand went instinctively to my arm, pulling me back from the window. His eyes burned with urgency. She found us, he whispered. My pulse thundered in my ears. How? Jason shook his head, his jaw clenched. Doesn't matter. What matters is she's here and she knows exactly what we found. Outside, the SUV door slammed shut. Madison's figure moved through the mist like a predator, calm, assured, almost leisurely. She wore a long coat belted at the waist, her hair perfectly styled despite the drizzle. In her hand, a leather folder swung casually like a weapon. She rapped sharply on the door, her voice lilting as though we were old friends meeting for tea. Mother-in-law, Jason, I know you're in there. Let's not play hide and seek. Why don't we have a conversation? Jason mouthed, don't answer, but Madison's laughter followed, cold and echoing through the pines. I'll count to 10, she said, her heels crunching against the porch. And if you don't open this door, I'll assume you're destroying evidence. That wouldn't look good, would it? Tampering with my father-in-law's estate documents. She started counting, her voice sickeningly sweet. 1, 2. Jason moved to the desk, gathering the envelopes. He shoved the will into his jacket, then pressed the evidence folder into my hands. If she gets inside, hide this. Don't let her touch it. Jason. 3, 4. The countdown was slower than necessary. She wanted us to feel every second, to stew in her control. Jason straightened, his face hardening. No more running. He strode to the door and flung it open just as she reached 5. Madison's eyes glittered as she stepped inside, scanning the cabin with deliberate slowness. Charming, she murmured, brushing past Jason as if she owned the place. Her gaze landed on me and her smile widened. Well, well, you did find something after all. How clever of Walter to hide his secrets here. He always did love his little games. I clutched the folder tighter to my chest. You won't touch this, Madison. It's over. Her laughter sliced through the air. Over? Oh, darling, it's only just beginning. She sauntered toward the fireplace, unhurried. You see, the world already believes me. I'm the grieving daughter-in-law, trying to honor Walter's legacy. You. Her eyes flicked to me with contempt. You're a bitter old woman clinging to what isn't yours. And Jason. She gave him a look so sharp it could cut glass. You're weak. Always have been. Following Daddy's rules. Hiding behind Mommy's skirts. Jason's fist clenched, but he didn't move. Madison tilted her head, the predator savoring her kill. But I'll make you an offer. Hand over what you found, every page, every scrap, and I'll let you walk away with a shred of dignity. Refuse, and she leaned in, her whisper venomous. I'll bury you in court, in the press, in the eyes of every friend you've ever had. By the time I'm done, you'll be nothing but a cautionary tale. I felt heat rising in my chest. Walter saw through you. He documented everything. We have the real will, Madison. The real one. Your little forgery doesn't stand a chance. For a heartbeat, her smile faltered. But then it returned, sharper than ever. Do you really think truth matters more than perception? By the time your so-called evidence is introduced, I'll have painted you as senile, manipulative, jealous. I'll claim you coerced Walter. I'll have experts lined up to testify that he was losing his mind. Who do you think they'll believe? The angelic widow in blue? Or the desperate, bitter relic clutching at papers? Jason snapped. Enough. He stepped between us, his voice cracking with rage. You've stolen, lied, and humiliated this family for the last time. We're not afraid of you anymore. Madison arched an eyebrow, amused. Oh, Jason, you've grown a little spine. How adorable. He jabbed a finger toward the door. Get out. Now. She didn't move. Instead, she slowly opened her leather folder and slid a document onto the desk. You're not the only one who found something, you know. I froze. She tapped the paper with a manicured nail. This is a draft lawsuit. Elder abuse, coercion, defamation. Filed first thing Monday. It names both of you. By the time this hits the news, you'll be toxic. No one will touch you. No friends, no allies. And the will. Lost in a sea of mud. Jason stared at it, his hands trembling. You wouldn't. Oh, I would. She leaned back against the desk, folding her arms. Because I don't lose. Walter is gone, and this empire belongs to me. The sooner you accept that, the easier it will be for everyone. For a moment, silence blanketed the cabin, broken only by the patter of rain on the roof. Then I stepped forward. My voice shook, but I forced every word out like steel. You're wrong, Madison. You will lose, because Walter planned for you. He left more than a will. He left proof, not just for us, but for the court, for the banks, for anyone you try to fool. Her smile thinned, eyes narrowing. You're bluffing. I opened the evidence folder and slid a photograph across the desk, the one of her signing papers beside Walter. Does this look like a bluff? Her face drained of color for the briefest second before she recovered, laughing too loudly. Forgery. Photoshop. Do you think anyone will believe you over me? But Jason was ready. He pulled out his phone, swiping quickly. We don't need them to just believe us. Dad's files have timestamps, digital backups, notarized stamps. Every piece of this can be verified. And when it is, you'll be the one standing trial. For the first time, Madison's mask cracked. Her hands trembled as she snatched the photo, her voice rising. You don't know what you're up against. I've destroyed bigger obstacles than you. You think a few papers will save you. She tore the photo in half, then quarters, her eyes wild. Jason lunged forward, grabbing her wrist. Stop. The struggle was brief but vicious. Madison fought like a cornered animal, clawing, kicking, trying to wrench the folder from my hands. I stumbled back, clutching it to my chest as her nails raked my arm. Jason wrestled with her, his face contorted with fury. And then, the metal box still sitting on the desk toppled to the floor with a heavy clang. The sound froze us all. Madison's eyes darted to it. She saw the rest of the envelopes spilling out, the final will, the bank statements, the damning proof she hadn't yet destroyed. With a guttural cry, she shoved Jason aside and dove for them. But this time I was faster. I scooped the envelopes into my arms and held them high. Enough. My voice rang out, louder than I thought possible. This ends tonight, Madison. You can tear photos, you can spin lies, but you can't erase the truth. Walter prepared for you. And tomorrow morning, this entire box goes straight to the judge. She froze, her chest heaving, eyes burning holes through me. For the first time since Walter's funeral, she looked afraid. Jason stepped beside me, his arms steady around my shoulders. You've lost, Madison. Walk away before it gets worse. For a long, tense moment, she said nothing. Rain battered the cabin, wind howled through the pines. Finally, she let out a bitter laugh, low and trembling. You think this is over, she hissed, snatching her coat from the chair. It's never over. People like me don't lose. We wait. We adapt. And when you least expect it, she leaned close, her whisper venomous. I'll be back. With that, she stormed out into the storm, her SUV roaring to life and vanishing into the mist. Silence filled the cabin again, broken only by my ragged breathing. I collapsed into the leather chair, the envelope still clutched to my chest. Jason knelt beside me, his face pale but resolute. We did it, Mom. We actually did it. I nodded, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. Walter did it. He knew. He protected us even after he was gone. Jason took the box, locking it shut once more. Tomorrow morning, we deliver this to the court, and Madison shall finally face the truth. I looked toward the door, where rain still lashed against the porch. Somewhere out there, Madison was plotting, licking her wounds, vowing revenge. But for the first time since Walter's death, I wasn't afraid. Because I held the truth in my hands, and truth, unlike Madison, doesn't disappear.